second title defense is against a guy named Roberto Duran.
Know when they lose, when they lost. They know, we know. So when they was...
La convención es gracias al señor Suleiman, que ha sido buena gente conmigo y cada vez que me invoca a venir a estas convenciones, a mí me encanta porque me encanta.
He was tough, they said. Roberto Duran, the man they called Hands of Stone. But at 21 years old, undefeated and unstoppable, he walked into Madison Square Garden and got dropped to the canvas for the first time in his life. One punch from Esteban de Jesus changed everything. But here's the thing about tough. It is not just about never falling down. It is about what you do after you hit the mat. At 74, Roberto Duran looks back at a career that spanned 5 decades and 119 professional fights. He won world championships in 4 different weight classes. He knocked out 70 opponents. He fought everyone who mattered in his era. But when you ask him about his toughest fights, the answer gets complicated. Tough does not always mean what you think it means. Sometimes the toughest fight is the one you lose. Sometimes it is the one where your body tells you to quit, but your heart will not listen. These 5 fights show you the real meaning of tough. Not just punching power or a strong chin. We are talking about 5 different kinds of toughness that built a legend. The psychological shock of defeat, the strategic mastery of conquest, the spiritual weight of redemption, the physical impossibility of size, and the brutal price of punishment. This is Roberto Duran at 74, recalling his 5 toughest fights, November 17th, 1972. Roberto Duran was not yet a legend. He was a natural disaster. At 21, he was the undefeated WBA lightweight champion with a record of 31 wins, 0 losses, and 26 knockouts. He was a whirlwind of relentless pressure who made opponents afraid before the first bell even rang. 5 months earlier, he had savagely ripped the title from Ken Buchanan when he stepped into the ring for a 10-round non-title bout against Puerto Rican contender Esteban de Jesus. Everyone thought it was just another stop on his path of destruction. Then the first round started. In the opening 30 seconds, de Jesus landed a left hook to Duran's chin that dropped him to the mat for the first time in his career. Just like that, down. For a fighter whose entire identity was built on being an indestructible force, this knockdown was not just a punch. It was a seismic psychological event. The startling upset was not just that he got hit. It was that he got hurt. His aura, the thing that made him Roberto Duran, was cracked. He rose at the count of 6, but he looked flat-footed and disinterested. The shock of that knockdown had done its damage. But the knockdown was not a lucky punch. It was the preface to a 10-round lesson. De Jesus was a slick, talented fighter, more technical than anyone Duran had faced. He refused to brawl. He thoroughly outboxed Duran by executing a perfect game plan. He constantly landed punches from long range, frustrating Duran's aggressive, pressure-based style. Duran, for the first time, had no answer. His primary tool, his raw and unyielding aggression, was rendered ineffective. His frustration, a new and unwelcome feeling, boiled over. He was warned twice in the 5th round for hitting after a break and a low blow. These fouls were not the acts of a dirty fighter. They were the acts of a lost fighter. Unable to impose his will, he lashed out. This fight was tough because it was a stylistic and mental test that he completely failed. When the final bell rang, Duran retreated to his corner in disgust, already knowing the outcome. The unanimous decision for de Jesus handed Duran the first psychological blow of his 32-fight career. But this loss may have awakened the sleeping beast. It was a necessary humiliation. It created one of the greatest and most ferocious rivalries of the 1970s. The toughness of this first defeat provided the fuel for Duran's evolution. He would return with new, more refined tools. In their 1974 rematch, Duran knocked out de Jesus in the 11th round. In their 1978 rubber match, another definitive stoppage to unify the lightweight titles. This first loss was the crucible that forged Duran from a brawler into a true champion. What do you think makes a fighter truly tough? Is it never losing, or is it how they respond when they do? Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts. And if you are enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button because we have a lot more to cover. If the de Jesus fight was about the shock of defeat, Duran's first encounter with Sugar Ray Leonard was about the strategic toughness of conquest. After unifying the lightweight division, Duran had moved up to welterweight. His target was the undefeated WBC champion, Sugar Ray Leonard, the golden boy of American boxing. Everything about the fight was stacked against Duran. Leonard was younger, faster, taller, and had a longer reach. He was the 9-5 betting favorite. The bout was set in Montreal, the site of Leonard's 1976 Olympic triumph. Duran noted that Leonard thought everyone would love him there. Duran was the bull, brought to the Matador Stadium. But Duran's victory on June 20th, 1980 was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. He understood that a boxing match would favor the faster, slicker Leonard. His only path to victory was to turn it into a street fight. For months, he insulted Leonard and his wife. Leonard later admitted this tactic was devastatingly effective. "Never did another fighter penetrate my psyche as much as Duran," Leonard said. Duran goaded him, and Leonard, wanting to prove his own manhood, took the bait. Leonard chose to fight Duran toe-to-toe and completely abandoned his own style. This was Duran's first and most important victory. He won the mental war before the physical one even started. With Leonard agreeing to fight his fight, Duran unleashed a tactical and physical assault. He made Leonard fight his fight by cutting off the ring and being in superb shape. He continually forced Ray to the ropes and unloaded heavy shots. In the second round, Duran stunned Leonard with a left uppercut, knocking him backward. The punch proved Duran could take Leonard's best shots and hurt the champion in return. For 15 grueling rounds, Duran pounded Leonard with solid right hands, vicious inside uppercuts, and superior counterpunching ability. He absorbed Leonard's spectacular flurries and kept walking forward. The toughness of this fight was the sheer, suffocating effort required to execute this game plan. It was a 45-minute war of attrition, a test of will against a physically gifted and dynamic opponent. Duran had to be in the superb shape of his life to maintain that relentless pressure for 15 full rounds. The unanimous decision victory was not just a title win. It was the validation of his strategy, his will, and his heart. He had climbed to welterweight and beaten the best fighter in the world. But then came the fall. Following his legendary win over Leonard, Duran fell into disgrace. The No Mas debacle, his infamous surrender to Leonard in their rematch, had turned him from a national hero into an outcast. He was seen as a discredited, aging boxer, a spent bullet. His career looked to be a sinking ship after he followed the No Mas loss with a title shot loss to Wilfred Benitez and a shocking upset defeat to the unknown Kirkland Layang. The fight against Davey Moore on June 16, 1983 would possibly lead to his retirement, Duran admitted. It was his last chance. His opponent was the WBA junior middleweight champion Davey Moore. Moore was 23 years old, undefeated with a record of 12 wins and 0 losses, and a powerful puncher who had won all 3 of his title defenses by knockout. The 5-2 favorite, Moore's camp dismissed Duran as over the hill and openly spoke of using this fight as a stepping stone to big money fights. Nobody gave Duran a chance. This fight is unique because the toughness was not in the opponent, but in the stakes. Duran was fighting for his very legacy. He was fighting the ghosts of No Mas and the perception that he was a quitter. The fight took place on Duran's 32nd birthday in a summer-hot Madison Square Garden. What unfolded was a masterful and sublimely crowning moment. Duran was born again. His former trainer, Ray Arcel, called it a performance compared to that of any great fighter who ever lived. Duran was, in his own words, like looking at a tape of me 5 or 6 years ago. He made the attack from the outset, slipping Moore's punches deftly and digging uppercuts to Moore's head and belly. He was snarling behind his jab, like the Duran of old. He systematically and brutally broke the young champion down. He poked Moore's eye with his thumb in the first round, causing it to swell shut. He bloodied Moore's nose and battered him relentlessly, sending him to the canvas in the 7th round. By the 8th round, with Moore's trainer throwing a blood-soaked white towel, the fight was stopped. This was a tough fight because it required Duran to overcome his own demons. The spiritual toughness was in finding the Duran of old within his discredited self. By winning his 3rd division world title, he recaptured his good name and set the stage for the final, audacious challenges of his career. He proved that heart and skill could overcome youth and power. He proved that he was not done. Fresh from his redemption against Moore, Duran immediately challenged the most feared fighter on the planet. Marvelous Marvin Hagler was the undisputed middleweight champion who had cleaned out his division. The fight on November 10, 1983 was defined by the massive weight and size disadvantage. The promotion framed it as the middleweight against the lightweight. While Duran had not made 135 pounds in years, he was, at his core, a natural lightweight who was now past his best. Hagler was considered by many to be the greatest ever middleweight champion. The physical disparities Duran faced were staggering. Against Leonard, Duran had an 8-inch reach disadvantage. Against Moore, it was 4 inches. Against Hagler, it was 9 inches. Hagler was 5 feet 8 inches, but with a 75-inch reach compared to Duran's 66 inches, and the weight difference was enormous. Duran was a natural lightweight fighting at middleweight. Hagler was a natural middleweight in his absolute prime. The fight defied all expectations. It was not the brawl many anticipated. It was a largely tactical affair. Duran unexpectedly chose to box from the outside, using a quick and blinding jab to deter the champion. Hagler, for his part, was strangely passive and adopted a safety-first approach. This was a clear sign of his respect for the smaller man's power and skill. The true toughness of this fight lies in a critical, often forgotten fact. After 13 rounds, Roberto Duran was ahead on all 3 official judges' scorecards. He was, for 39 minutes, outboxing a prime Marvin Hagler. Duran executed a near-perfect tactical plan, absorbing big left hands from the champion, fighting without fear, and frustrating him. He only lost because he ran out of gas. Hagler, sensing the fight slipping away, unleashed a cruel and sustained attack in the final 2 championship rounds, rounds 14 and 15. He dominated those last 6 minutes to forge ahead and win a close but unanimous decision. This brutal 15-round epic was a test of Duran's absolute physical limits. He fought a larger, stronger prime-era legend to a standstill for 39 minutes. That alone is a testament to his toughness. He proved that skill and heart could make up for size, at least for a while. He proved that he belonged in the ring with anyone. If the Hagler fight was a testament to Duran's limits, the Hearns fight was the brutal price he paid for exceeding them. This bout on June 15, 1984, just 7 months after his gallant loss to Hagler, represents the toughness of pure punishment. This was a massive mismatch on every level. Thomas the Hitman Hearns was a physical anomaly. He was 6 feet 1 inch tall with a 78-inch reach, facing the 5'7.5" Duran, who had a 66-inch reach. This 12-inch reach disadvantage and 6-inch height disadvantage against one of the most devastating punchers in boxing history was nuts. Hearns was a stylistic nightmare for Duran, who needed to fight on the inside. Hearns' entire style was built around long reach and fast combinations that kept opponents at the end of his nuclear right hand. Hearns promised a second-round knockout and delivered. The fight was a frightening demolition from the opening bell. Hearns dropped Duran twice in the first round. At the bell, a dazed Duran went to the wrong corner. The end came in the second round. Hearns uncorked a sawed-off shotgun blast, a smashing right to the jaw. Duran was knocked out cold on impact. Trapped against the ropes, he pitched forward onto his face, unconscious. This was the first true knockout loss of Duran's 82-fight career. Duran's own reflection captures the sheer futility of the fight. "Damn, I tried to get under those long arms," he said afterward, "and he knocked me crazy with that right hand." This fight was tough because it was a pure, brutal lesson. Duran looked awful because he was wholly unprepared. An alleged translated quote reveals the truth. "I didn't train, I didn't do anything," he reportedly said. "I got fat and it was a nightmare making weight. I was just drinking and partying and he was losing weight because he was someone dedicated to his sport. It was the ultimate punishment." A reminder that disrespect for the craft was met with annihilation. Reflecting at 74, Roberto Duran's 119-fight career is a mosaic of these experiences. His 103 wins and 16 losses are not the statistics of a flawless technician. They are the resume of a warrior who defined himself by his greatest attribute, his heart. His legacy, which places him as one of the 20th century's greatest fighters, is built on his audacious willingness to seek out the Four Kings and risk everything. He endured the psychological toughness of a first loss to de Jesus and used it as fuel to become the greatest lightweight of all time. He mastered the strategic toughness required to dethrone a golden boy in his prime when he beat Leonard. He found the spiritual toughness to rise from the ashes of his greatest shame and achieve redemption against more. He tested the physical toughness of his own body, pushing an all-time great middleweight to his absolute limit against Hagler, and he paid the brutal price for his own human flaws, absorbing a historic beating from Hearns. These 5 fights define toughness in its many forms. Not just the ability to take a punch or throw one. Toughness is facing your first defeat and coming back stronger. Toughness is outsmarting a faster, younger champion through pure will and strategy. Toughness is proving the doubters wrong when they have written you off. Toughness is fighting a man who is bigger and stronger and nearly beating him anyway. And toughness is stepping into the ring even when you are not ready, taking your beating and owning your mistakes. Roberto Duran earned his nickname Hands of Stone through 70 knockouts, but his legend was built on something deeper. It was built on his willingness to face anyone, anywhere, under any circumstances. It was built on his refusal to take easy fights or pad his record. At 74, looking back on these 5 fights, Duran can say with certainty that he never backed down from anyone. He fought the best. He beat some of them. He lost to others. But he always showed up. He always fought. He always gave everything he had. That is the legacy of Roberto Duran. Not just a great fighter, but a warrior who showed us what it truly means to be tough. Which of these 5 fights do you think was his toughest? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories about the greatest fighters in boxing history, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.